What you're viewing here is a portlet showing the new visualization introduced in PPM 10, which is the gauge. And what I will do is that right now this gauge is using the portfolio item data source, which is one of the built-in one that you mentioned. And I will just show you how to get data from anywhere. So just to demonstrate, actually, so this is portfolio item data source, the one that's built in. And you can see there is nothing about programming there, even though I already add a few other data source. But what I will do is that I will just create and show you how to create a data source for showing some program information. So if you want to do that, the first one is that there is a new page, a new menu that we've introduced in PPM. You can open administration. And here you have portlet definitions, and there is a new page called Manage Self-Service Portlet Data Source. And this is where you can create all these new data source leveraging PPM database. So before you actually go there, you will need to create a dashboard data source, a SQL data source, we can also call it. So I will not go into details and use a dashboard data source that already exists. But this data source basically lets you run any SQL query against the PPM database. So if your data is somewhere into the PPM database, you can get it and show it in the self-service portlet. Now, I take it that most of the people looking at that will be already familiar with the SQL data source and already be using some, for example, for using like in some list portlet or any other builder portlets. And these are the same data source. So if you already use some SQL data source, you can leverage them. So this is the list of all your data source that you have created. So mine is just called a simple program info list. So this will show different attributes of our programs. You can see this is actually a simplification of an existing data source that is called program list. And then you can pick the name. So for example, my program info. The name here is the name that your end user will view and pick in their self-service portlet when they pick in the data source. So pick something that's meaningful. Here, the service name, I will mention it a little bit after. We can just call programs. And the reference code is used for migration. Now you can migrate this data source in PPM 10. For the access, as usual, you can decide who can actually view this data source in the self-service portlet. So you can control if you don't want some of the person to be able to access this data source. And here, the big difference is that this security control is done at the data source level and not at the portlet level. So that's a big difference compared to if you to the portlet definition and data source before. And now you have all of the columns. So by default, let's pick all of the columns and show them. Then all of the filters defined in the data source, same thing. There is some filter settings that I will show later. And oData link, we might talk about that later. But just doing this, as you see, I just enter this information, I click create, and it's enabled and it's done. Now, if I go back to my portlet and now take the list, you can see that my program info is actually appearing here. And if I select it, I have all the information that I selected. You have all the filters and you have all the columns. Now, some things is very clear is that this is coming from the data source is not very user-friendly, and we can change that very easily. So here, actually, there are some columns that we do not want users to view. For example, program ID. So if you want to hide some columns in the data source, you can just change the column mode. So here by default, I will show all of them. So now what I will do is I will show all of them except a few ones. And here I will define the columns I want to hide. So I will hide program ID. And here again, you can hide the columns only for some users or some security group or some org units. So this is very powerful because with one data source, you can display different information to different users. Let's say we don't do scope change management, you also hide the scope change. Relative priority, we will not use it, so we will hide it. We will keep program status, and we don't need the manager email. And that's about it, that we're good. Now, these labels are not very nice, so we will enter something different. So this, we just put health, issues count. That's the hyperlink, so we can just call it link. Program ID, we don't show it. We don't show it. So this is just the managers, program managers, name, status. And this we don't care, number of risk, and we're good. Now you can see hyperlink column. This will be useful because so for the program names, we will actually say the hyperlink column is this one, and that will make the link clickable in the grid view. We are good, so we can save this. If we refresh this one, and we pick again my program info, you can see that this is already much better. You have something that's much easier to use. Now we still have too many filters, and actually we can really simplify that. So what we'll do that for filters, instead of doing like columns and decide what we will hide, what we will do is that we will change that and show hide all except, means we will hide all the filters except for one. The one we will show is actually the program manager. And this is the one that we will show. And for program manager, actually, if you check here, you can see that there is already a selection which is autofill from context, means that the program manager will be automatically selected with the user currently logged in, which is myself. And the problem is that if I want to show all the programs, you can see there is none because this is created by me. I don't want. So you can see I created a few ones. But if I want to view all of them, there is much more programs. So what I would like is this one to be empty by default and not selected. So what I can do is that for the filters, I will add the filter settings for program manager. You can see that by default, this will be auto-filled, and this is automatically detected because the validation of the filter is configured in the workbench to say the return entity is users or resource. If they say it's a user, it will automatically say, oh, if this is a user, I can automatically fill this with the user that's currently logged in. If I do not want this behavior, I click here. And I can also control whether this field will be hidden, read-only, required, and who will be able to have these special settings for this filter. So you can pick a default value, but I will keep it empty. I save it. Now, if I go there, I refresh. I pick my program info, and now you can see I only have the program manager. By default, it's empty. And so let's create an as view. So let's pick the grid, and we want to have the program name. Since I configured it to be hyperlink, that means that if I click on it, I can navigate to I can open the program, and we will also put the health. With an icon, it's more user-friendly. Who is the user manager, and what is the number of issues? And that's it. So now you successfully get some information from for project program information.
That's fantastic. Can you put that into any of the charts and the views as well?
Yes, of course. We can create some bar charts. So let's actually look at something which is the views. So this is a new feature introduced in PPM 10. So you can see that you have different views. So let's say that this was the default view. So we can just call this the grid view. Okay. So now I have this. This is a single view, so it's not very useful because I want to actually view different information. So I will just copy it, and I will say something. Let's say the bar chart view of issues and risk. Okay. So now we will switch to, let's say, a cluster bar chart. We will group that by let's say by status. So instead of putting the status, we will put instead of putting the name, we will put the status, and then we want to see the number of risks and the number of issues. And that's it. And here you can see you have these two views. So this is automatically saved when you make a change on one specific view. You can switch between them here. So between the grid and the bar chart. And this is some things that obviously you can also do from the dashboard. If you have multiple views per portlet, this is the icon here that is only displayed if you have multiple views. Then you can just click and switch between your grid view and the chart view directly from the dashboard without having
really neat.
Pages. Yes.
And does that mean that from the the chart view, you can drill down further into the detail below it because you're showing number of issues.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it's very easy to do, much easier to do, and this can be done by end users. You can see this is the chart view, and here I have a drill to view options. I can just say, okay, when I'm looking at the bar chart and I click on some things, I want to drill down into the grid view. So for example, it will depend on what you click on. So here you see you click on the status. So that means that when you will click on the status, only the new ones, then you will view only the programs that have that are in new status. And this is something we can easily modify by, let's say that we go to the grid view. Let's add the status, name status. So here you can see that, okay, by default it's put at the end, so we will just drag and move that column a bit before. Okay, now you have everything. Okay, so this is saved. So let's go back to our bar charts, and let's do that from the main dashboard actually, because this is much better than from this complicated configuration screen. So here we have the bar chart, and I only want to view my active project. I will click here, and you can see you have the drill down path at the top, and now I only view my my projects that are active, and I can also reorder here if I want to. As of now, only drill down if you look at the same data source. But the advantage is that unlike with the other drill down mechanism of the old portlets, you do not need to create some filters. The filtering will be automatically done by the portlet using what we call field filters here, where you can, even if you didn't have a filter defined in your data source, you can see you can drag any field that is here, and you can say which values you only want to show. So if you only want to show the active data, you can do that, and it will filter your data. And this is this mechanism that is automatically and transparently used by the drill down mechanism. So what you do is that when you click on this active status, it will open the grid view. But under the hood, it will also set a status on the a filter on the status to be active here. But that's done transparently. That doesn't change your original chart. So if you reload and switch to the original one, it will remove the filter.
Oh, fantastic! Well, that's really, really cool. That's much different to the last version. Really appreciate that.
It's much easier to use, and the important part is that all of this is done by the end users. This is creating drill down portlets and viewing data in the way that you want can be done easily by the end users of PPM, by the business users. It's not the admins' work. Now, if the admins wants to create this by themselves and expose this as shared portlets, of course they can do it, so that if you have some users that really do not want to do anything, they can just consume shared portlets like they used to in PPM. The self-service portlet is available everywhere.
Okay, thank you. So I've got one other question, because you've just sparked my curiosity. On the data sources, I saw oData as one of the sections. Now, I've seen and read a little bit about oData and using information in other sources or other applications. Does that mean that we can use PPM data elsewhere?
So we have introduced a new capability that we called oData links, which is a way for users to leverage the data of their portlets outside of PPM without having to bother with authentication. It's a bit like the equivalent with PPM data of a Dropbox link. When you want to share a file, you just share a link with anyone, and anyone with the link can access the file. The oData links in PPM is the same, except with the PPM live data. So to enable oData link on the data source, you just need to turn it on. So here I turn it on, and again you can decide who can create oData links on their data source, and it's a configuration per data source. So I will save it. I say anyone can create it. And now the users, if they go in their preference, here you will see a new option called oData link. If you click here, then you can create a new oData link. So for example, my programs info. Okay, it's enabled. Okay, the oData link is created, and you can copy it. And you can see it's just a URL. And this URL does not require any authentication. And so keep that in mind. If someone has the URL, they have the live data. They have access to the live data. So you can just copy it to clipboard. And now this lets you get the information. So let's open Excel, because I will show you that. So, but You can use the same thing in Power BI, which have the same oData connector. So this is built-in capabilities in Excel in Microsoft product. So data, you just get data from other sources from oData feed. And that's where oData link is really nice, because you just need the URL. You don't need any authentication. You just pass the link here, click OK, and Excel will automatically load the data, the same data that was feeding the Portlet. And it's the live data. So here you can see in the rows, you have all of the information. So let's say that you don't care about the health icon because that's not something that you want. So you can transform data. That is the capability of Excel oData. And you can do whatever you want with all of the columns. So as I say, you can remove the hyperlink, or the hyperlink maybe let's remove this one and this one. You can rename. This one is just health. Same stuff. You manage your information. You do everything that's done, and once you're okay, you just close and load. And that will insert your data in the spreadsheet. And this is, for information, this is live data. So that means that you can create Excel charts, whatever, on the data that has just been inserted. But let's look at the one world program here. You can see that right now the health is red. So let's say that someone in PPM still go there. Okay, so let's this one is created. And let's go back to the grid view, and let's open the program, the one world. So you can see links are clickable. And I will change the information to just show you that this is just really live data. It's not a snapshot. It's not Excel export. It's really live data. So now I will change it and I will put it to I don't know, let's say to yellow. Done. So this is automatically saved. If I go to Excel and I just click data refresh all, so that will just get all of the data. And when we say refresh all, that means that you can have multiple spreadsheets in Excel that gets data from multiple oData source, and you can see the health has been automatically updated. And once you have this oData link, you do not need to go to PPM to recreate the link. Once you have the link, you can use it in Power BI or in Excel or in any tools with an oData connector, and you will get your data. And this is secure in the way that if you go to oData links, here you can see how many times the oData link was used. Actually, every time you get data, it will call this link many times. So that's why it's already 16 counts, even though we only synchronized that twice. And as a user, you can view your links. You can revoke them. If you delete them, that means that no one will be able to use the link anymore. And you can see when it was last accessed. And you know what filters are passed there. And this is, by the way, something that is also available for the admins. The admins in one call, they can view all of the oData links that have been created by users. So they know again when it was last used. So this way they can detect any abuse of oData links, and they can by themselves, all admins can do that, disable an oData link or completely remove it if they have any problem. So admins still have full control about viewing what gets out of PPM through oData links. Again, with oData links, there is no authentication, so you do not know who will get the data. And of course, this is absolutely optional. It's a feature toggle that you have to turn on in PPM. So by default, oData links cannot be created. It's up to you whether you want or not to enable them in PPM.
That's fantastic. So that means that I can use those PPM data sources as oData sources and use them in any reporting tool and publish information to who and how I want to inside my organization.
That's correct.